Hello everyone, and welcome to round 11 of the very strong 1936 international tournament in Moscow. We have Nikolai Nikolaevich Riumin versus Jose Raul Capablanca. Now, as you've seen in my, I believe it's a game from round 3, Capablanca started with 2 draws and then he got a win against Nikolai Riumin in round 3, but it wasn't like the greatest of wins. Riumin just blundered his queen, so it was basically Capablanca started with a win in this tournament by his opponent blundering a queen. But now it's time for a different game. Riumin now has the white pieces, and Capablanca will have to prove that he is indeed the better player here. And as you remember, in that video I also mentioned that in the 1935 international tournament in Moscow, Nikolai Riumin defeated Capablanca in the first round, which most likely costed him first place in that tournament. So before we check out the game, we do have a nice photo challenge, and it's this photo challenge will be a bit different, but I still do hope you enjoy it. So it's a twofold question. Who is the grandmaster on the left in this photo? And part 2 of the question, what's the story behind the photo? So best of luck to everyone. Let's check out the game. Like we said, Riumin has the white pieces and he opens with knight to f3, the reti opening. d5, we have c4, c6, we have e3 and the knight to f6, transposing into the English. Knight to c3, knight bd7, c captures on d5, c captures on d5, and d4 now. We have e6, bishop to d3, bishop to d6, castles, and here white has a variety of options. White should definitely simply continue developing pieces. Bishop to d2 is alright, queen c2 is fine. Any ideas? So rook e1, a3, but here Riumin goes for the forcing e4, and this is basically making it too easy for Capablanca to play this game. Capablanca has the black pieces, and this move simply allows Capablanca to exchange a couple of pieces and simplify the position, which definitely goes in his favor, as he is considered to be the better player, and of course he does have the black pieces, so it's basically a free equalize. So that's something that often happens when you play against someone who you think is a better player than you. You're not gonna play something you would normally play. Rather, you think, okay, I'm not strong enough to go for a win here. I'm just gonna go for a draw, and then you're gonna lose that game, because if that person is in fact better than you, then he's gonna beat you regardless of the equal position. So we have d captures on e4 by Capablanca, knight captures on e4, knight captures on e4, bishop captures on e4, and now knight to f6, bringing the knight to a nice active square, forcing the bishop to move back, bishop to c2, and now h6. So, okay, those two, the bishop pair is very nice, eyeing that king, but there's a long way from making something happen with that. Queen e2, we have b6 now. Capablanca is ready to develop the light square bishop, knight to e5, and now bishop to b7. This is move 14, and black already developed his light square bishop without having to really work for it. So if you see that when black develops his light square bishop without having to concede somewhere, it's a very nice game for black. Rook to d1, and now comes rook to c8. Bishop to f4, you have to get the other rook into the game as well. Bishop to b8, and now bishop back to b3. Queen to e7, we have rook a to c1, now the other rook is developed as well, and now comes knight to d5. We have rook captures on c8, rook captures on c8, and now bishop to g3. And here Capablanca has to figure out how to continue here. His position is definitely nice. He has a very nice control of the c-file, but that could very easily change if white, for example, goes queen d2 and then brings his own rook to c1. So here Capablanca plays queen to g5, which increases the activity of the queen, but also keeps an eye on that c1 square. But what Capablanca really wants to do is force a queen trade here and go for the endgame. Here, the best idea for white is to play queen f3, attack the f7 pawn, and here Capablanca would either have to
admit that maybe queen to g5 was a bit too active and go back with the queen, or give up the bishop pair via bishop captures on e5. So this would have been the best idea for white. But here Riumin again played queen to d2, going straight into Capablanca's territory. So Capablanca is of course very happy about this. Queen captures, rook captures, and now rook to c1. Bishop to d1, you don't really want to play something like that, then this rook will stay active for the entire game and you'll be stuck with the bishop on d1. So you do have to play rook d1. Capablanca exchanges the rooks, rook captures, bishop captures, and now comes f6. Kicking away the knight, we have knight to d3, and now bishop captures on g3. Pawn captures on g3. And now if you look at this position, which this position is basically the result of that queen d2 move of offering a queen trade by Riumin. Now you can see that Capablanca has 2 pawn islands and Riumin has 3 pawn islands, so definitely better for black. And on the other hand, white also has a doubled g pawn, so that's also not working really well for him. And Capablanca has an easier way of activating his king. So small, you know, advantages, but still advantages. King to f7, Capablanca brings the king into the game. Knight to c1, and now knight to e7. Bishop to b3, we have h5 now, knight to e2, and now knight to f5. Notice that the isolated pawn is on a dark square, which doesn't really work in white's favor, as white has a light square bishop. So the only way for you to ever protect this pawn is to either somehow manage to bring the king over to defend it, or the knight will be stuck defending it forever. We have bishop to c2, trying to grab the knight, as you know, if you eliminate the knight, then Capablanca's light square bishop will also be kind of useless against the isolated d pawn that is on a dark square. So knight to d6, of course Capablanca doesn't allow this exchange. Knight to f4, going for the h5 pawn, and here the f4 square is very active for the knight. So what I want you to do here is pause the video and try to find a move Capablanca played to really improve his position. It's a very nice move. The engine really agrees with Capablanca, so you know it's not some tactic to solve. Just you know, to get an idea how to proceed in a situation like this. So feel free to check it out. I will give it a couple of seconds for you to decide. For those of you who were able to do it, congratulations. You are an excellent endgame player. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, here Capablanca played g5. g5 is a very nice idea. Because you do have to move the knight. Your knight is attacked on f4. If you play knight to d3, then after knight b5, there's no way for you to defend the d4 pawn. So this immediately loses a pawn. Another thing after this g5, now you can play knight e2, and you know, from e2 knight will protect the pawn here, but then your knight is stuck forever on e2 guarding this d4 pawn. So what Riumin played was actually knight captures on h5. And here Capablanca could have really gone for some activity, but instead he went for knight to b5 to grab the d4 pawn immediately. But there is also a very nice line here, bishop to d5. First attack the a2 pawn, and after white figures out how to defend this, either bishop to b1 or a3, bishop to b1, then comes f5, because the only way white can ever get his knight back into the game is to push g4 and then bring his knight over to g3. But after white pushes g4, of course black will not capture, black will play f4, and then this knight is stuck here for the rest of the game. There is no way he's ever coming back into the game. So this would have been a very nice idea, but Capablanca's idea also works. So after this knight to h5 move, we have knight to b5 going for the pawn. Now comes g4, of course making room for the knight on g3. Knight captures on d4, grabbing a pawn. We have bishop moves, and now comes bishop to d5, attacking the a2 pawn. Now you can't really defend it anymore. That's why after this knight captures on d4, a better idea was bishop to b1, simply keeping an eye on the a2 pawn. Here, this seems like a more logical move, you know, as you all know, the relationship between the knight and the bishop, when they are apart with 2 squares in between them, then the bishop controls all of the squares the knight can use in front of him, and of course the knight controls the bishop as well. So this seems like a more logical move, but in fact in this position it doesn't work. Bishop to d5, attacking the pawn, a3, now the only way to defend the pawn. and now bishop to b3, forcing a trade of bishops. Now you can see that it's actually knight that's controlling the bishop. Bishop captures, knight captures, and now we have knight to g3. Riumin tries to get the knight back into the game, and now comes knight to d2, controlling the knight's jump to e4, and also preparing knight to c4. If you allow knight to c4, then you will either lose the b2 pawn, or if the b2 pawn moves, you will lose the a3 pawn. So not much you can do about this. b4 is played, not allowing knight to c4 to come with such a threat, but now comes b5, simply keeping an eye on that pawn on a3. Knight b1 will now attack it. Knight e2, we have knight to b1 attacking the pawn, and now comes knight to d4. Now you kind of don't want to play a6 here. If you play a6 here, simply defending the pawn with ideas of capturing it later, white can simply play knight c2 to defend the pawn, or even knight to b3. So now if black captures, knight c5 will grab the a6 pawn. Knight attacks, knight captures, also defending the b4 pawn. This wouldn't be so great for Capablanca. So after knight to d4, he decided to immediately capture. Knight captures on a3. Now comes knight here, attacking the a7 pawn, and now comes Capablanca's main idea. Again, your a7 pawn is under attack. How do you defend it? Pause the video here and try to find Capablanca's idea. Of course, I will give it a couple of seconds for you to decide if you're interested in doing it. So once again, for those of you who were able to do it, I applaud you. You are an excellent endgame player. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, king to e8 is the move Capablanca played. And now it becomes obvious. Knight captures on a7 is met with king to d7, and there are no squares which would allow this knight to get back into the game. The knight is trapped. King c7, king b7, king captures on a7 is coming, or white will simply give up the knight for a pawn and lose the game. So here Riumin saw that. After king e8 was played, he decided to play g3. Now comes king to d7, attacking the knight. Knight to b8 check, of course you can't grab the a7 pawn, and now we have king to d5. f4 was played, and here after knight to c2, this is move 44, Nikolai Nikolaevich Riumin resigned the game. Why did he resign? Well, it's fairly obvious. The knight is attacking the b4 pawn. After you defend it with knight to a6, you have a knight on a6. That alone is reason enough for you to resign. But after king d5, you see that white has no good plan against king c4 and capturing the pawn. Whatever you do, you try to bring the king in, simply attack the pawn, king goes, knight captures, and now if you exchange knights, then the pawn endgame is of course winning for black, and if you try anything, black will simply ignore you, push a5, and you're welcome to do whatever you want. On the king side, the a4 pawn is simply too fast. So yeah, after knight to c2, Riumin resigned the game, and again, a very nice victory. 2 wins against Riumin in this tournament for Capablanca, so definitely he got his revenge for last year. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Marco Sanchez, Laxminarayan Chakrapani, and Big L the Crusher for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with another interesting video. Thank you all.